Welcome back to Story Voyage, where we uncover the most gripping and unexpected tales from everyday lives. Tonight's story will take you on a journey filled with mystery, suspicion, and a shocking truth that will leave you speechless. Grab a seat and get ready, because this is one story you don't want to miss. Life in our quiet suburban neighborhood had always been predictable. I liked it that way, no drama, no surprises. My wife, Sarah, and I had settled into this routine over the past 5 years, enjoying the sense of peace and stability. At least that's what I thought. It all began innocently enough. One night, while taking out the trash, I noticed a black sedan with tinted windows parked across the street. It wasn't unusual for visitors to come and go, so I thought little of it. But then the car came back the next night, and the night after that. At first, I rationalized it. Maybe a neighbor had guests staying over, or perhaps someone was just using the street as a parking spot. But something about the car bothered me. It was always there around 9 p.m. and gone by midnight. The more I noticed it, the harder it became to ignore. The first signs. I brought it up to Sarah one evening while we were cleaning up after dinner. "Have you noticed that car parked across the street?" I asked. She looked up briefly, her expression indifferent. "What car?" "The black one. It's been there almost every night for the past week." She shrugged. "Probably someone visiting the Robinsons. You're overthinking it." Her response felt too dismissive, but I let it go. After all, she was probably right. I didn't want to come across as paranoid. But then, one night, the car wasn't across the street. It was parked right in front of our house. The uneasy feeling. I stood at the living room window, staring at the car. It was late, and the street was quiet, save for the occasional flicker of a neighbor's porch light. The car's dark windows seemed to watch me back. The next day, I mentioned it to a couple of neighbors, casually asking if they knew whose car it was. None of them had any idea. Some hadn't even noticed it. That's when I decided to pay closer attention. Patterns start to emerge. I began documenting the car's appearances. Every night, it showed up at the same time and parked within view of our house. On weekends, it stayed longer, sometimes until the early hours of the morning. One night, I decided to step outside for some fresh air and walk past the car, pretending not to notice it. As I got closer, I saw a figure in the driver's seat. The windows were too tinted to make out any details, but I could feel their eyes on me. When I was about 10 feet away, the car started up and drove off. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a coincidence. Confronting Sarah. The next morning, over coffee, I casually asked Sarah again. "That car was back last night. It's weird, don't you think?" Her reaction surprised me. She seemed annoyed. "Why are you so obsessed with this car? It's probably nothing." Probably, I agreed, though her tone didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just dismissive, it was defensive. For the first time, the thought crept into my mind. What if Sarah knows something about this car? Taking matters into my own hands, I decided to get proactive. The following night, when the car showed up, I jotted down the license plate. A friend of mine worked in law enforcement, and after some convincing, he agreed to run the plates for me. The car was registered to a man named Kyle Benson. The name meant nothing to me, at least not yet. I asked Sarah casually that evening, "Hey, do you know anyone named Kyle Benson?" Her reaction was subtle but telling. She paused for a fraction of a second before saying, "No, why?" "Oh, no reason," I said, trying to sound nonchalant, but my suspicion grew. Following the trail. The next weekend, I decided to follow the car when it left. It felt like something out of a movie. I stayed several car lengths behind, my heart pounding as I tailed it across town. The sedan eventually pulled into the parking lot of a small, dimly lit bar. I parked a safe distance away and waited. A few minutes later, the driver got out. He was a tall man in his mid-30s, casually dressed. But what stopped me cold was the person who walked up to him moments later. It was Sarah. She wasn't dressed in her usual casual attire. She wore a dress I hadn't seen before, and the way she smiled at him made my stomach churn. They embraced briefly, then walked into the bar together. The confrontation. When Sarah got home later that night, I was waiting for her in the living room. "Good night?" I asked. She froze, her eyes darting to mine. Yeah, why are you up so late? Just couldn't sleep, I said. Funny thing though, I decided to take a drive earlier and ended up at this little bar across town. Saw someone who looked just like you there with a guy named Kyle Benson. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Anything you want to tell me, I pressed. She sat down, burying her face in her hands. It's not what you think, she whispered. It never is, I said coldly. The fallout. Over the next hour, she admitted to everything. She'd met Kyle months ago at a work event, and what started as a casual friendship had turned into something more. She insisted it wasn't serious, that she didn't want to hurt me. But the damage was done. I moved out the next day and filed for divorce shortly after. Looking back, the mysterious car wasn't random. It was a reflection of cracks in our marriage that I hadn't wanted to see. Now, every time I see a black sedan, I remind myself of the lesson I learned. When something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Thank you for joining me on this intense journey. If you enjoyed this story or it struck a chord with you, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more unforgettable tales. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the unexpected right here on Story Voyage.